Hey guys, welcome to a new review. In this review, I'm going to be reviewing the newest episode of The Walking Dead, Season 6, Episode 14. We're so late into here. Twice as Far. This episode was not quite even as good as the previous episode. The last part of this episode is really good, but the whole beginning part just kind of takes away from it. There are ways of showing the stuff that they showed without making it rather boring. For me, I felt a little bored throughout the beginning. Now, it was a good episode, but that's in comparison to previous seasons. This entire season has been so great that, compared to every other episode here, it falls short. Now, previous episode was a little slow, but it did have a lot more going on than this episode, I think. The last part does make this a really good episode, and if they just stretch that last, I guess 10 minutes into the entire episode, just filling the entire episode, I think that would actually make it a really good episode. But by having all of that good stuff just at the very end, I felt a little gypped. Did you feel gypped? I don't know. It just felt like everything happened too fast there. Like, bam, 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 bam. And there wasn't really time for you to say, well, shoot. So, what I'm really curious about in this episode is why they decided to kill off Denise instead of Abraham. This is the point where Abraham would have died, and I guess sort of comic spoilers here. Abraham died in a similar way to that of Denise, and they decided not to do that. I'm hoping to save Abraham for Negan. That would be a good way. If it's not Morgan that Negan ends up killing, I would be happy if it was Abe. It just, those two characters have fallen short on my list, and without them we'd be better off. But another thing is, they're not really killing off main characters so much anymore. If you think about it, Denise was on her way to becoming a main character, but still not in that main character area yet. She was just developing. And to kill her off so soon is kind of like when we had Noah and then they killed him off. It's like, not really a main character death so much as just a death for the sake of having a death in the episode. But whatever, at least we got to see something cool at the end, right? Okay, so start off, we see Rosita and Spencer after, in the beginning of the episode, they just show, the whole rigmarole of people doing stuff. Eugene guarding the wall, Rosita guarding the wall, not Rosita, Sasha. But then we see Rosita and Spencer have actually hooked up, and they've got a little fling going on there. But then later on, when we see Rosita and Spencer hanging out, she doesn't seem to actually like him. It's just like she's hooking up with him for the sake of it. It's not really a relationship that she's hoping to develop. And I kind of feel sorry for Spencer there, because he's lost everyone at this point, and he's just trying to find someone, I think, and she seems kind of rather really cold towards him, but I don't know. Okay, next, we see Daryl has his bike now. That is really fun to see. You see him looking through the stuff in his bike, and then Carol comes over and talks to him, and we get to hear more about how Carol is developing into Morgan Jr., which just what they're doing to Carol's character is kind of, it's a destruction of her character, and I am not a fan. I really hope that they turn the tables back around here, and by the end of this episode, I kind of have a hint that they might be doing that, but then again, it might be setting her up for death, for all I know. Okay. Morgan has built a jail cell, and I figured that back when I saw him building something, but I don't know if I mentioned that in my review or anything, but he has this jail cell, and Rick asks him why he's building it, why he built it, and he said, it'll give us choices next time. Freaking Morgan can't help but don't think about the poor lives of these murdering freaks. I really can't sympathize with Morgan. Morgan is ridiculous. But anyway, and I do think that jail cell will end up being important and crucial to the story later on. And that'll be sort of Morgan's legacy, if it happens the way I want it, that is. Okay. Next, Abe and Eugene, they set out on their little trip together. We see them just walking away from Alexandria. And apparently we find out later that that's because Eugene wanted to get supplies for this idea of his, but I'll get into that once we get towards that point. Okay, Denise gets Rosita and Daryl to take her on the little expedition trip to a pharmacy so she can get more drugs for all the sick people and stuff. But she's acting kind of weird in this episode, and as with the episode progresses, we kind of get an idea of what the overall story is in this episode. It's kind of these weaker characters are trying to redeem themselves, and by the end of the episode, you have one who's redeemed himself and one who had a chance, kind of, but was almost there. So, Denise is, throughout this episode, like, wants to become tough like everyone else. She wants to be brave. And then, what's his name? Eugene wants to be tough and brave himself, as well as just being considered his own person and not just some scared little wimp that he has to be taken care of. That's not what he wants to be seen as, and that's relatable. You can understand that, but what he does at the end of this episode is not really something that I'm a fan of, but whatever. So when Denise takes Daryl and Rosita out, they run into an obstruction in the road, and then they have to go taking a walk. And Daryl decides to go through the woods, but Rosita wants to go follow a path that's the railroad track. And Denise follows Daryl, and Rosita goes her own way. And then they meet up. I believe Rosita got there first, and she's like looking at them like they're idiots, and there was nothing to worry about, which is kind of stupid as you go on throughout the episode. Okay, next we see Abe and Eugene. They get to this like factory type area, and it's a place where they make metal stuff. And Eugene wants the items that are there so that he can make his own bullets. He wants to be useful. There's another thing that he wants to be useful by. But then he sees this walker. And of course, Abraham is very proud of Eugene's idea here, and he seems very happy about it. But Eugene sees a walker, and he says he calls dibs on it. But the walkers had metal melded to it from like a spill of something, and now Eugene couldn't kill it, and he's like struggling with it. And then Abraham helps him out and kills it, and Eugene's mad at him because he didn't give him the chance to kill it himself. And I really didn't see anything wrong with what Abraham did here. Eugene's just being weird old Eugene. There's obviously, because if it was Rick that was struggling with Walker, anyone would help him. If it was any other character struggling with Walker, they would need help anyway. So it's not just because Abraham sees Eugene as a weak person, but that's just Eugene being weird. And also in this episode, Eugene uses a ponytail, which is weird looking. He doesn't look good with a ponytail. Okay. So they get to a pharmacy, Daryl and Rosita and Denise, and they run into a weird zombie there that's not really notable. They get the stuff, and then they head out again, and then they get to the place where they have to go splitting up into different trails, and Daryl decides to follow Rosita and just go on the tracks. But then Denise has some crazy idea to go to this car so she can get into a cooler. She opens the door, there's a walker inside of the car. It attacks her, she barely is able to escape it and kill it. And of course, Daryl and Rosita rush up to help her, and she's like, no, I want to do this myself. Like a little kid, basically. And much like Eugene in this exact same episode. But she dispatches it, and then she gets the sodas that were in the cooler, which is very funny because, of course, Daryl has been trying to get soda for Tara and Denise, so, which is also kind of sad if once you get to the end of this episode and then think back about all this stuff, but whatever. And then Denise is like explaining herself why she had to do that, and then she's talking to them and explaining how Daryl reminds her of her brother, and she feels safe around him, and then Rosita, she brought her along so she could be, wouldn't be alone. But then out of nowhere, just shunk right through the eyeball. And I believe it's the right eyeball, the same eye that Carl has lost and the governor has lost, and now she's lost. But she's dead from it. It went right through her head. And that is quite a differ from the comics, because Denise in the comics lived way past this point. And so that's just another thing that Walking Dead's doing. They won't let you know what's going to happen next. And though I do like that, I kind of feel like it should have been a more main character that gets killed at this point. But I'm willing to let that one pass just for the sake of the episode. And immediately Daryl and Rosita get their weapons ready, but it's ridiculous. There's 20 saviors with their guns on them, and Dwight comes out. Dwight has this scarred up face, and it's kind of pinkish and weird, but it's not like in the comics where his eyeball's huge and exposed and half of his hair's gone. It's a little more believable, like you could exist with this amount of burn that he has. And I like the way he looks. It's basically, that's fine there. I just don't like the actor. The actor plays Dwight weird. See, Dwight in the comics, he's very serious, and he doesn't seem so much evil in the beginning even. It's just, you can, by the time you see what his story plot is and all, you can understand why he's working for Negan and all. It's for a reason. But the way Dwight's acting in this episode, it makes it seem more like he's an actual creepo and not just someone who was put into a bad circumstance. He's acting like laughy and giggly. If you think about it, he's had his face burned and scarred for life because he wanted to be with his wife. Negan took his wife and then burned his face when he wanted to get his wife back. Why would you be smiling and giddy like he is? It's just, the actor's choice right there is bad, and everything the actor does makes him very unlikable. He's more of a villain than Dwight in the comics was, so that's kind of giving me the idea here that this Dwight may not be long for the TV show. Just because the actor alone can't make himself likable. Sorry I'm coughing a lot. I think I'm coming down with something. Okay. So, after that, by the way, the Saviors brought up Eugene, who they caught, because when Eugene got angry that Abraham killed the Walker, he said he doesn't need Abraham and he wants to take care of stuff for himself, and Abraham has outlived his usefulness for him. So Abraham left him alone, and immediately we see he was kidnapped by the Saviors. But anyway, they put him on his knees there, and Dwight's talking to Daryl and acting really snotty, like a real creep, and you just want to kill him. And apparently when he shot his arrow that killed Denise, it was meant for, I guess, Daryl, and he just missed because he's new at the crossbow. Just a little something interesting. He didn't shoot a woman in the back of the head intentionally. So it was not as loserish as it turned out, I guess. Whatever. And right here, this is where it gets weird. So Eugene sees Abraham over by these buckets, and he says, Dwight's talking about he has to kill one of them, so he said, Eugene says, wait, kill my friend who's over there. He's a real jerk. He deserves it more. And immediately, I actually got the feeling like, is he actually legitimately turning in Abraham, or is this a plan? But I kind of got more of a feeling like they were going to differ from the comics and make it so that his plan is to get Abraham killed here. But they didn't differ from the comics, because right after he says that, he turns around and takes a bite out of Dwight's junk. He just bites down on it, and that happened in the comics, so don't feel like that's something that's extremely outlandish and never would be expected. Right when you see him on his knees, I was thinking, are they going to pull that? Are they actually going to do what they did in the comics? But then I got the feeling like they wouldn't. Then once it happens, I'm like, they did it. I can't believe they did it. It was quite shocking, and he's biting on there for like a whole minute while guns are going off. Daryl and Rosita are able to get weapons. Abraham's shooting down the Saviors. And then eventually Dwight just gets loose of the mad dog Eugene, and he tells his men to retreat, and they head off. Daryl was going to go chase after them, but Rosita told him to stop, and then they just, I guess they took Denise's body home and they buried her. Then we see Carol wrote a letter to Tobin, who, earlier in this episode we saw Tobin kiss Carol like they're dating at this point. And he reads the letter, and we hear the narration of Carol reading it out loud, basically. And she's saying that she's leaving. So Carol doesn't want to kill anymore, and she's leaving. So maybe this will end up like it was at Terminus. Remember, Rick tossed her out, and then she ended up saving them. But it might end in a different way, where she ends up perhaps dead? I'm hoping not, but it is possible. It's always possible. And I wouldn't imagine them reusing a story plot like they did with Terminus. I can't imagine them doing that whole thing again. So just certainly hope that doesn't happen. But whatever, looks like Carol's gone. And then Abe goes up to Sasha and acts all romantic-like and woos her to him, and then she invites him inside. So I'm pretty sure that's where the episode leaves off, and it was a pretty dang good episode. Eugene went a little far, I would say. I would imagine headbutting someone in the nuts would be interesting, ramming into them, tripping them, but full-on biting down, I couldn't do that myself. It's just, screw self-preservation. I have self-respect. Okay, well, tell me what you guys thought of the episode. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and make sure to leave a TWD-related question in the comments below, and I will answer you in a Saturday video. If not Saturday, probably Sunday, because it sometimes spills over. But anyway, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.